Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time each and every week and spending it here with us on NAC TV. I'm Eoin Devereux, news reporter with the Banner Press, joined this week by publisher, owner, all-around ne'er-do-well, Ken Waddell. Ken, good to have you in here this week.
Can we edit that introduction a little bit?
All right, ne'er-do-well, owner and publisher.
Oh.
Yeah. Shift the priority, focus. No.
That's much better, thank you.
All right, so we're back again. Always appreciate you taking a little bit of time and spending it here on us as we talk about some of the stories of the week and how we gathered them and some of the details behind the scenes of what it takes to put together a local newspaper. If you tuned in to last week's show, appreciate you sticking around for that. As we admitted on the show, wasn't our best of the year so far, but we're able to bring a little bit more to the table in this week's edition. And of course, as always, it's always best to start right at the beginning. And the beginning for a newspaper is right on the front page. If you've been following social media in and around Neepawa or NAC TV or the Banner and Press, you know the details of this front page story. A cherished family heirloom back in November of last year, taken, unfortunately. A mystery as to who stole this quilt from the England family and Lane England, who put so much time and effort to putting this together. It was a family heirloom passed down to the grandchild, something that meant something to this family. And as things progressed, it meant something to Neepawa as well. Just in case you don't remember the story, when it first occurred late last year, there was the Quilt Club. They were having a special event in Neepawa. They were presenting all the different quilts, both inside and outside. I believe Presbyterian or the Anglican Church?
Presbyterian Church, yeah.
Presbyterian, yes. Yeah. And just before things shut down, they noticed, it was Chris Waddell actually who noticed this and brought it up to Lane's attention, that one of the three that Lane had outside for presentation went missing. Well, very quickly things turned into a search for this. They came into the Banner office actually, asked for some assistance. We helped as best we could to get the message out there about this item that went missing. I wish I could tell you that the story we have on the front page had that happy ending of the original was found. Unfortunately, reality is not always a happy ending. It is still missing. We still have no idea where that quilt is. But Lane took this discouragement and turned it into something much more positive. And Ken, let me ask you about that. I'll talk to you about sort of the story and how this developed over the last 5 or 6 months.
So I think it was actually a 2-day quilt show, and it disappeared partway through the first day. So they had a poster up on the front door, and they put out social media, and they put posters up around town, and nothing happened. They put an ad in the paper, and no results.
We had the story as well.
Had the story. Lots and lots of hits on the social media and inquiries and phone calls.
Coverage, I believe, on NAC TV as well in one form or another.
Yeah, they did an interview on NAC TV. Nothing. And nobody seems to know how on earth it could disappear. It wasn't as if they stole. It wasn't as if, I shouldn't say stole, but it would appear stole. All 3 quilts. There was just this one quilt. It was kind of a cute quilt. It's the one that appears on the front page is a pretty much exact reproduction of this quilt. And so Lane went to work and rebuilt her quilt, and it was quite a few years ago she made this original one for her family, and remade it, and some of the ladies in the Quilt Guild helped her, with the actual quilting and the binding around the edge and everything. So on Easter weekend, I think it was, she was able to re-give this quilt, which is, but it's a story it's taken on to its own. Like my wife, as you said, was involved a bit here, and she put it on the fact that this has been redone onto a social media site for Missouri Star Quilting Company, which is considered, it's in Hamilton, Missouri. We were there actually last summer, and it's considered kind of the quilting capital of the North America, and hundreds of people responded to that. They're just quite happy that it's been remade, but quite annoyed that it was stolen.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like I said, it's a nice little story, and we're very pleased to be able to bring you the update on how it played out. But it's still unfortunate that even in a small, tight-knit community such as Neepawa, something like this can occur. And don't kid yourself, that's just the way it is all over Manitoba, all over the globe, really. I mean, Ken's being very diplomatic about it, and no, I have no problem using the term stolen. I have no problem using that, because if it were an accident, the individuals would have come forward by now and just pleaded. It's like, I'm sorry, I thought it was sort of a giveaway thing or something like that, and all can be forgiven. But when you're this late in the game like this, and there's still no details, stolen. And it's one of those little things that just gnaws at me.
Well, yeah, there's it is very, you feel violated, or certainly Elaine, I'm sure, felt violated. And whenever something like this happens, you have to wonder where are people's heads at, because it's not as if they're going to make $1 million out of it.
No.
Not even going to make $100 out of selling this quilt. And they also put out there, though, if you need a quilt, if you need a quilt, we will get you a good quilt. Yeah.
No, that's it. That's the worst part of it as well. I can understand maybe something like that, but when the opportunity is there, where they have very publicly over the years said, if you need, we can do something, we can help you with that. It's just, that's disheartening, but I don't want to turn this into a negative. I want to turn this into a positive, something. It was wonderful to see the community of Neepawa in general, Ken, get behind Lane and the family and try and help as best they could. That was an uplifting part, I thought.
Yeah, well, there's good news in the story for sure, and it's nice to see, and I'm glad we were able to report it. You commented when you're putting the paper together that it's probably not the most earth-shaking story that's ever been on the front page of the Neepawa Banner Press, but it's a good story.
Well, let me clarify on that. I sort of said it's not my type of news, because anyone who's known me and anyone who's met me sort of knows I'm not the most sentimental of individuals. So, but this one reaches out. There's certain stories that you need to know. Council stuff, for example. Your taxes, things along those lines. They're kind of dry, but there are things you need to know to be a better citizen and hopefully a better person. And then there's stories like this where you appreciate knowing the outcome, where you appreciate going through it, and maybe in your own way experiencing it with the person as well. The emotion, that's what it is. We're supposed to, as media, as journalists, we're supposed to educate, but we're also supposed to bring that type of emotion, that something.
I just thought, Owen, you could probably hone your sentimental skills, because the Quilt Club is always looking for new members. And, Chris has her studio right here in this building, so on your breaks you could go down and, learn how to quilt.
Well, I was raised in a macrame family, and that's a whole East Coast, West Coast gang thing, and maybe it's, you don't want to start a ruckus.
Well, Chris could teach you how to quilt, and you could teach her how to do macrame.
But no,
I think you're lying about the macrame part, too.
I'm just glad I pronounced it correctly.
That's a start.
But no, always appreciate those that do things like this, and we do hope you will take a few minutes of your time and read the story, or check it out on NAC TV Reads the News every week. They go through the paper right here on NAC TV. So take a little bit of your time, either read it yourself or have it on in the background while you're doing some quilting or some macrame. All right, let's shift over. We were talking about, unfortunately, crime is the reality. I'm going to go over to this story first, actually, Ken. Most recent Neepawa Town Council meeting, there were several items that were discussed, one of which was a report that was given to the Town Council from the Spruce Plains RCMP. It was a little bit of a basic review of the first 3 months of 2023, just talking about some of the things that have been going on and some of the numbers they have seen in and around the region. And one of the things I found very interesting from that, the story, of course, you can find on page 7 of this week's edition of the Banner Press, urban and rural crime seems to be going in a very interesting and separate directions. They went through all the numbers in which calls of service have occurred over that 3 months, and urban, which they classify as Neepawa and Minnedosa, is on the rise. It's on the increase. Meanwhile, rural, which is all the other areas in and around Minnedosa, in and around Neepawa, they're on the drop, a notable drop. I'm not going to give away the specific numbers right now. That's why you got to pick up a copy of the paper and read it for yourself. But it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic, Ken, of one going one way and the other, unfortunately, going the other.
Yeah, that does puzzle me a little bit because when we hear of crime here at the office, usually it's rural, car theft, truck theft, tool thefts and whatever. That said, we were robbed personally last summer. Some tools from our garage. The garage wasn't locked, so whatever. But I was surprised at that statistic. I'm wondering, I don't mean to be, well, yeah, I do mean to be a skeptic sometimes. I know that in the rural areas, there is a sort of a feeling that, oh, well, there's no point in calling because they're not going to come anyway, or they can't get here soon enough. I think there's a bit of that going on. I think there's a fair bit of unreported crime. But that said, there may be a fair bit of unreported crime in the urban areas too. Yeah. But yeah, that is an interesting, I think it's if we can believe the statistic, it's an encouraging statistic for the rural areas. It's not so encouraging for the urban.
That's right. We will give you these numbers, though, the overall numbers for the first 3 months. 547 calls of service over the first 3 months in 2023. That does seem like a lot. It sounds like a lot, but comparatively to 585 calls in that exact same time in 2022. So that's a notable. That's about 42, I believe, calls fewer than the year previous, which is at least a step in the right direction.
And that's over 90 days, right?
Yes, yeah. From January 1st to March 31st, year over year. So
that's about, what, six calls a day, basically.
Exactly.
6-7 calls a day.
Now, you might think that sounds a little treacherous, but recently I was doing a little research and I looked in on my old stomping grounds of Portage-la-Prairie. Portage-la-Prairie RCMP, over the first 3 months of last year, they haven't put out the new numbers for this year yet, but last year, the first 3 months, it was 2,100 calls.
Ouch.
For them. So as rough as it is, at least we're not dealing with, we think of ourselves as urban here in Neepawa and in Minnedosa, but places like Brandon, places like Selkirk, places like Portage and Winnipeg, Dauphin, they all have to deal with different circumstances and a lot more circumstances, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that's too bad because, population-wise, you add the population of Neepawa and population of Minnedosa, it still doesn't come anywhere near the population, I don't think, of. It's still quite a bit less than what Portage would be. So.
Oh, yes. Portage is just under 13 right now, just city proper. And, of course, that's for the RM of Portage-la-Prairie as well, so.
Yeah, we're less than 9 between the two.
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
So.
But some other interesting things, don't think it's all doom and gloom in there because a lot of it is sort of traffic related. There are traffic numbers in here. There are a few different items about some vacancies, upcoming vacancies within the RCMP branch and some new individuals coming in. So this is that type of information. Hopefully you will take a few minutes and educate yourself on, because I think it's important to know a little bit about your community.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's a good story.
Oh yeah, other items from the council meeting as well came in the form of new potential housing for the community. And this is one I've talked about in other stories over the years, the need for housing in Neepawa and the need for innovative, outside of the box thinking by, I guess, building a box and then dropping it on a foundation here. Modular housing. We've talked about it before. For those of you that may not remember, modular housing is when you're in an area and you're building a house off-site. And then you take that model, that structure, and you drop it onto the foundations and you put it on a foundation. It's essentially a house. As opposed to being built on the land, though, you build it somewhere else and you plop it on the land. What's so wrong about that? I don't think much. I think it offers a new and innovative way for first-time home buyers or maybe retirees who are taking a step down into a smaller space to continue to have their independence for the very first time.
Well, the modular housing has been, well, it's had its ups and downs and bumps in the road for sure. We don't need to review that, but it looks like a good project. It's going to be on land that's sort of within the town perimeter. Mm-hmm. It's either is already serviced, is very close to services. It's close to the water tower, so it shouldn't be hard getting water there.
Oh yeah. Again, we didn't give you all the details. It's been approved, this rezoning to allow for modular housing over by Gill Drive, is it not?
Gill Drive, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, at the west end of Gill Drive, in behind, west of the water tower, southwest of Neepawa Plumbing and Heating, north of the trailer park that's there already, the modular home park that's already there. So it's consistent with the area, so nobody should be able to complain about that. And I think that I would say God bless them. I mean, I think they're talking about, is it 40 units?
No, not even that many, Ken.
No, okay.
It was 24.
24 units?
Yeah.
I think that piece of land would hold more than that. There may be plans for the future there, but I could be wrong. There was 40 acres there, so you don't need an acre per home, that's for sure.
Yeah. And again, if you're unfamiliar with what a modular home looks like, I think a perfect example is if you live in Neepawa and you're driving down the highway, maybe driving to the co-op or driving back home from the co-op or the Tim Hortons, and you're driving east, you just sort of turn your head to the south a little bit, and you can see a version of the modular home just off of the highway there.
Yeah, just west of the co-op gas station, or east of the co-op gas station.
Yeah, that's a perfect example, and I think it's a beautiful structure. It's a smaller home. I'm just one guy. I don't take up that much space. I mean, that would be perfect for someone like me. And the reason I'm a little passionate about this is because I would love to be able to own a little bit of acreage, a little bit of property. I don't need an entire house, the quote-unquote traditional house. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's just going to gather dust. It's just going to get a little too vacant for me. For a first-time owner like me, a smaller acreage like that, a smaller facility like that is perfect. But there's so many communities that just don't seem to be wrapping their head around the innovation and the changes that are happening to housing. Not everybody wants a giant 2,000 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. They don't need it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of communities that just aren't getting that messaging just yet.
Well, it's not modular housing, but there was some uproar a few years ago when the townhouses were put in east of the Riverbend campground, and also there was a big batch of them went in, block and a half west of the Yellowhead Center.
Yeah.
And they're full.
Uh-huh.
They're full all the time. I don't know I know the ones at the west of the Yellowhead are an ownership based, like you have title to your property. I don't know if the ones down in the campground area are, I still don't know if they're condoized or rented or what they are, but they're full.
Yeah.
And of course they're full because at certain stages of people's lives, as Eoin says, that's exactly the kind of housing that a single person needs, or a married couple, or people come
just starting their family.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. Once again, sometimes I disagree with the things that the town of Neepawa does. Sometimes I don't see the long-term vision for what the town is doing. But this is not an example of that. They see the viability of something like this and the need for it. There was one objection to it from the public, and there was also some need for clarification from a few provincial organizations that would require giving approval to allow this to happen. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of people that are seeing the viability and the necessity for it now. If you want to learn a little bit more, once again, it's in this week's edition of the Banner Press. It was a pretty full slate of stuff from the town council. Thank goodness, because otherwise this week's paper would have been a lot like last week's paper, where I got nothing accomplished for the most part.
Yeah, You know, you talk about I just noted there, and I noted when I read it before, the objection came through, and it's a legitimate objection for sure, but about the blending of the modular homes in with the commercial area.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember driving down a street a few years ago in Winnipeg, and I thought, what the heck is this? Because on the left was a chain link fence and a factory, like a whole block or 2 blocks of factory. And on the other side of the street was houses with the driveways backing out onto the street. There has to be a border somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have a big chunk of vacant land in between factories and houses normally. Maybe you can under modern conditions, but that just isn't how it was. I mean, some people lived across the street from a factory.
Yep. You know, another example just occurred to me is if you go to Brandon on a regular basis as of late, hopefully if you're viewing this, you make a trip out to Brandon every once in a while, maybe drive around the community. I'm seeing this more and more in the city proper, Ken. And unfortunately, my parents who live in a suburban area are going to have to be dealing with it themselves in the very near future, where you have the traditional quote-unquote houses in there, and then there's a vacant lot, and they put up these attached houses, condo things, whatever you want to call them, that look completely different from everything else in the area. Those are little things that annoy me a little bit. I mean, I can understand if people are annoyed by that. I would like that consistency as well, truth be told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're sure far a long ways away from England. I've watched the occasional real estate show from England, and you know, the grade 2 listed or whatever they call them, and you can't even change the color of the paint.
Yeah.
Because that was the paint that was used in 1790 when they built this house, and you're not going to change the color. You know, some really strict rules there. We certainly don't have those kind of rules here. But you're right. There's, when you drive down the street, you say, "Oh my goodness, that sticks out a little bit." That's incongruous.
Like again, that's the good thing about this. It's going to be just an area of modular housing. It's not going to be sort of pick and choose type thing, which if someone has an objection to that, I can completely relate to and completely understand that. All right, we got a few minutes left here. I want to focus first and foremost, Ken, we have this as our last item, but I want to get to this now just to get a little bit more time, just to make sure we have time. Your column in this week's edition of the Banner Press, you talk about the significance of the media and a need for more attention when it comes to journalism on local levels.
Well, yeah, anybody who's read anything that I've written over the past number of years understands that I'm a huge disciple of local journalism, and I've been very blunt about it. And basically, I've said it, and I've said it publicly, I've said it in Community Newspaper Association meetings, is that it would appear to me, I think it's pretty self-evident, that the corporate media world doesn't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to journalism. Because the corporate world is geared towards generating profits for the shareholders. And trust me, journalism isn't always a profitable business. I could tell you a few stories about that over the 33 years that we've been involved in the newspaper business. And I think it's 126 years or something, or 27 years, that the Neepawa Press has been here in Neepawa, and we've owned it for the last several years. But the thing is that the corporations, they're going after the dividends, they're going after the profits. Their idea is that, well, let me tell you, if this business here, this building was owned by a corporation, we wouldn't be one journalism short right now. We'd be down to one journalist. And we probably
like it was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Let's remember the Neepawa Press used to be a standalone and competitor to the Neepawa Banner, and we watched from a distance. We very much used to enjoy, Ken, Kate Jackman Atkinson, myself, and other co-workers looking at the old version of the press and just seeing how abysmal it actually was.
Yeah,
and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, less and less, fewer and fewer staff, fewer and fewer costs, fewer and fewer stories, less and less effectiveness of the paper. The other thing that's happening right now, which is also talked about quite a bit in the story, and a lot of it is quoting from other people, is that corporations and governments, and shame on governments, well, shame on corporations too. They take their advertising dollars they take their dollars for advertising they've generated through taxpayer money, and they spend it out of country. social media, millions and millions of dollars out of country, and never to be seen again. So when you buy an ad on Google or Facebook or whatever, that money never returns to Canada. It's gone. It also takes it away from the newspapers and radio stations, TV stations, etc. And so the less money that goes into Canadian journalism, be it radio, television, or newspapers, magazines, I guess, the less chance there is to buy the services, purchase the services of reporters. If you don't have reporters, you don't have news. Well, if you don't have local reporters, you certainly don't have reliable news.
Let me ask you a question on that then. Can you talk about the corporations putting the money into the social media like that?
Yeah.
And the question I have is, the reason they do that is because they see the value. They see the value in it. I'm not saying there is value in it, but they see value in it. They think that's where the eyes are. What can local media, local journalists, local papers do to sort of make people aware that's not where it is? Like, what can we do?
Well, I think we can point out the fallacy of some of those news outlets. Like, I mean, and it is switching, and I allude to that in my column. It is switching back because it's different advertisers. I had one 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they advertised. I won't say the name. I don't want to embarrass them or draw undue attention to them. But they said, we like dealing with the local newspapers because, one, we're dealing with the same person every year. Mm-hmm. Then the corporations, they might be dealing with a different person every year,
right,
or every few months to buy the ad. But also, they know that they're getting local, reliable news. Like if you and I make a mistake, we hear about it pretty darn fast.
Oh, yeah.
If we were to ever publish something that was willfully false, we'd hear about it, and rightly so, really, really fast.
That's the thing, and I very much agree with you. I've made errors. I've made grammatical errors and whatnot. It's never intentional. Just unfortunately, sometimes they get passed. But I have never, and I can say this with 100% certainty, I have never put anything I knew was blatantly false in the paper or said it on the radio. Not once. And we both take great pride in that.
Yeah, exactly. And so we should. Honesty used to be an admired thing. Hopefully it still is. But the thing with the social media, and even like some of the cable networks, the bigger companies, whatever, they can put stuff in there that they know is wrong. They either don't fact check it, or did I say that right? Fact check, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or they willfully know that it's wrong, just to titillate people, to get them all excited about things, and create an unease, create fear, whatever, in the hope that they're generating readership or listeners, mm-hmm. Viewers, and it's starting to fall apart on them. You know, we can get through a major supplier television. We can get 550 channels. What do you do with 550 channels? Here's something that's interesting, sort of an aside, but I think that Bell Express View has 600 channels. Mm-hmm. This station here, NAC TV, is in the top 60. They're in the top 10% of the channels on Bell because it's local. It's corny. Sorry, yeah, it's corny. It's amateurish. We don't pretend to be anything else. But it is genuine.
Yeah. And
people like it because they know it's real.
That's right. We're going to have to cut you off right there, Ken. We are coming near the end of our show. But if you want to learn a little bit more about that perspective, Ken's column is in the paper each and every week. And if you have any story suggestions or ideas, or you have an opinion on Ken's column, or anything like that, give us a call at 476-3401, or get in touch with us at news@neepawabanner.com. We do appreciate you, because we're not here if you're not here. So once again, Ken, great that you're able to come in and give some perspective on this.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And thank you as well, once again, for tuning in to the story behind the stories. Have yourself another great weekend.